Hello everyone! Today my vlog will be examining how successful the police in England and Wales are at addressing domestic abuse. This will be in the form of a critical analysis. My student number is 2004309 and this is the assessment for ASC 221, an introduction to policing. I hope that you enjoy. Firstly, what will this vlog cover? We will be defining both the role of the police and domestic abuse. Secondly, we'll be looking at why domestic abuse is such an important issue. Thirdly, we will be looking at police responses to domestic abuse and examining both positive and negative aspects to these. And lastly, we'll be looking at why improvements are still needed. So, what is the role of the police? In the Police Vision 2025, it states that the police mission is to make communities safer by upholding the law fairly and firmly, preventing crime and antisocial behaviour, keeping the peace, protecting and reassuring communities, investigating crime and bringing offenders to justice. Also, for some further background to the police, within England and Wales, there are 43 territorial police forces. Next, we will be defining domestic abuse. It's important to note that there is not a singular definition for domestic abuse, as it's such a broad topic. However, the government definition is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behaviour, violence or abuse between those aged 16 or over who are or have been intimate partners of family members regardless of gender or sexuality. Alternatively, Women's Age defines domestic abuse as an incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading and violence behaviour, including sexual violence, in the majority of cases by a partner or ex-partner, but also by a family member or carer. This abuse can include, but is not limited to, psychological, physical, sexual, financial or emotional abuse. In order to understand these definitions further, it's also important that one understands the definitions for coercive control and controlling behaviour. So, coercive control is now part of the Serious Crime Act 2015. It's a new offence of controlling or coercive behaviour in intimate or familial relationships. Controlling behaviour, on the other hand, is defined as a range of acts designed to make a person subordinate or dependent by isolating them from sources of support and regulating their everyday behaviour. Next, we will be looking at why domestic abuse is such an important issue. Domestic abuse does not discriminate. It can affect any gender and any person from any background. In fact, for the year ending March 2019, the Crime Survey for England and Wales showed that approximately 2.4 million adults between the ages of 16 to 74 years of age experienced domestic abuse. In terrifying statistics, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic abuse within their lifetime. Similarly, 1 in 6 men will also experience domestic abuse within their lifetime. On a worldwide scale, domestic abuse is more likely than cancer, motor vehicle accidents, and malaria. Especially at the moment, domestic abuse is such a prevalent issue due to COVID-19. Lockdown is resulting in victims of abuse being trapped in their homes with their abusers. In fact, the executive director of UN Women described lockdown as a perfect storm for controlling violent behaviour behind closed doors, and that domestic abuse was ultimately the shadow pandemic. Similarly, domestic abuse has been a big topic recently due to the Euros. Studies showed that when England lose a match, domestic abuse is reported to increase by 38%. Next, we'll be looking at the police response to domestic abuse. During the period of the Conservatives being in power, there have been many cuts to public spending. This has resulted in a dramatic reduction in police staff. In fact, between March 2012 and March 2016, police officer numbers dropped from 134,101 to 124,006, a reduction of over 10,000 officers. The cuts to the police force have resulted in an increase in crime. Police recorded crime shows that since 2013, crime rates have increased by 7.5% and recorded incidents of violence against a person have increased by 65.1%. This is obviously a significant problem, as it shows that the police are not very successful with dealing with violent crimes against others as their forces are stretched. Next, we'll be looking at police culture. Rayner reiterates that important characteristics within policing are having a masculine ethos and skepticism. These do not work in favour of supporting a vulnerable female victim of domestic abuse who may be being systematically controlled, as officers may seem overbearing and critical of their account. Next, we'll be looking at police discretion. As some of the domestic abuse cases are potentially subjective when the police are debating which outcome to take, some cases which should have been are not recorded. In a study conducted by Andy Myhill, it was discovered that between the 3rd of March to the 23rd July 2014 within Southshire Police, there were 10 incidents for which domestic abuse should have been recorded and was not, as there is scope for differing interpretations of the National Crime Recording Standards and failure to recognise coercive control. This could also be malicious. This is known as cuffing. Cuffing is traditionally known as downplaying the seriousness of a crime. This can keep crime rates artificially low or reduces the amount of paperwork required for the police to complete. In 2018, official national statistics show that 30% of reported cases no action is taken, 38% of reported cases only a warning was given, and 4% of reported incidents results in a conviction. In 1997, Martin said that these low convictions show that there is much dissatisfaction with police response, as it's a failure to act as agents of social control. Recently, there have been improvements. Problem-orientated policing was introduced in some areas to develop effective response strategies. Now, body-worn cameras are used to help detect and record evidence. Similarly, there was the introduction of the DASH model and risk-led approach. This allows frontline officers to ascertain the level of risk that a victim is at and apply a risk grade to order cases and get specialist help. During COVID, changes were also made during lockdown. To make a greater awareness of domestic abuse, radio announcements, social media adverts, and posters were put in supermarkets, and even key workers were trained to recognise the signs of domestic abuse. However, there is still a long way to go. In 2014, HMIC found an alarming and unacceptable weakness in policing of domestic abuse. In fact, their report found that only 8 out of 43 forces responded well to domestic abuse. The DASH model also needs improvement, as the volume of cases means that there is a delay between the incident and the full risk assessment, and that there is not enough time devoted to each case. Also, there's variations in how the DASH interview is completed. To summarise, whilst there have been improvements such as technology, there is still a very long way to go before the police are considered as successful with dealing with domestic abuse. More training is required to recognise coercive behaviour, and conformity of DASH interviews is needed. A change in attitude is also needed as to not intimidate victims of such a heinous crime, and ideally more funding is needed from the government as police are stretched. In the UK, where police receive a call about domestic abuse every minute and 2 women are killed a week by their current partner or ex-partner, improvements are needed to be made to change this, especially during these uncertain times where so many more people are at risk. Thank you for listening to this vlog. I hope that you've learned much from it.